Welcome, everybody, to another Google Hangout originating on the BibleThumpingWingNet.com YouTube channel. Matt Slick is my guest. My name is Tim, the Bible Thumping Wingnet, and glad you chose to view this or to listen on the podcast. Today is Sunday night, July 5th, and it is a holiday weekend, so we don't know how many viewers we'll have as we're recording this live or how many guest callers we'll have in the room, but I am going to post that link to join right now in the on the feed on YouTube. So anybody who's watching and has a question or comment for Matt Slick. And the topic this evening is Gaymerica. It's kind of a follow-up from last week's Hangout, last week's Google Hangout. I wasn't here, but it was just over 2 hours. And Matt Slick did a lot of commentary on biblical marriage and a lot of dialogue with others about the Supreme Court ruling. And there was a group of non-believers here on YouTube who spent 9.5 hours, 3-part review of that hangout last week. And within the last week of that hangout, there's been over 2,000 views of that Google Hangout. And this group of non-believers spent a lot of time, Matt, reviewing your content. So I didn't watch it. I don't know. I'm sure some people did.
I'm sure they gave a real fair shake and an accurate representation of the position I was raising. I'm sure they did. That's why it would take so long, 9 hours, to be that fair.
Yes. Well, Len and I made a short video in the wee hours of this morning, challenging, encouraging any of them to join. And in the feed of that particular video, the same old comments and responses. Yeah, I'll come on your Google Hangout when you can answer these questions. And then they cut and paste like 150 questions about Christianity.
Brother.
Yeah,
those are the, I would just call them the immature ones. Not going to get very far. They don't, they're not really serious challenges. They're just mimics. They don't do their thinking.
So on your Monday podcast, I noticed that you continued a little bit talking about the issue of homosexual marriage.
Yeah.
And we'll talk. I guess we'll talk about that. But we do have callers right off the bat, so I'm going to add them to the broadcast. Now, here's the thing: because it's just me monitoring of this Google Hangout, if you don't have a question or a comment, please don't enter the Google Hangout, because if you enter the Google Hangout, I'm going to add you to the broadcast and say, you're on with Matt Slick, okay? I don't have time to do what we normally do, and that is once you get into the Hangout, look at the comment thread and, weed out who wants to engage and who doesn't. So if you don't want to engage, you can slip out, which somebody just did, so that's just fine. So the first person who entered, I don't even know how to pronounce your name, but I'm going to add you, Sierra, I believe. Sierra. You can unmute your mic. And Sierra, you're on with Matt Slick. You could unmute your mic. I could tell your mic is muted. Well, our friend, I don't know the guy's name, but I'll add the other person that's in here. The Peripheral Prophet. He's been on many times.
Well, that reminds me, the guy who was arguing in circles last week that I was addressing and giving the same answer 4 or 5 times. Someone was telling me that he put up a video or made some commentary really insulting that I wasn't able to answer him. Do you remember who that was?
I don't. I don't remember who that was. But if anybody does remember, they can send it to me in the comments or send it to me on Skype, or if you have me on Facebook. Trying to get our first caller in here. We got 3 people in here, but we have Logan Willis. Logan, I'm going to add you to the broadcast. Logan, you can unmute your mic. You're on with Matt Slick.
Oh, okay. Hey, how you doing, Matt Slick? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, great. Sorry, I did kind of come late. I wasn't ready for me to be on the first person. So,
It's very difficult to hear you, though. You gotta turn your mic up if you can. Sorry.
okay. Sorry, give me a sec. Okay. Sorry. Are we on a topic? Can you hear me better? Can you hear me
I
better?
can. Not really, but keep going.
Okay. So are we talking about a specific topic, or can we just talk about whatever? Can we
Are you
talk
done?
about it? Huh?
What? It's really hard to hear you. Sorry.
It's okay. How about now? No?
Um,
Better?
no real difference. But let me turn you up on my end, even. Go ahead.
Okay. Are we talking about a specific topic, or can we just discuss anything?
It's up to the host.
You can bring up any topic you'd like, Logan, but we're going to do our best to make it so that everybody can hear your question. And I'm not sure you're going to be able to do a follow-up question because it's so hard to hear you.
Okay. If it's too hard, you can just let me go and give it to someone else. Um, but I guess my question would be on the problem of evil, Matt Slick. And I was just curious, like, why would it be that a God who's all powerful and all loving would allow things like maybe cancer and rape to be allowed?
Why would
Okay.
he? Why would he allow evil? Well, let me ask you: are you a Christian, an atheist, agnostic, or what?
I'm an atheist.
You're an atheist?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, then, can you define for me what evil is?
Well, I guess I could just, for the sake of time and for the discussion, I could just define it basically as anything that's not optimal in
Well,
terms
then
of,
your thinking would be evil because it's not optimal.
well, I mean, optimal for people's health in general.
Just so, I'm going to answer you from the
Sure.
theological perspective, but what I'm trying to do is I want you to see that your perspective from your source is really, in order for you to have any legitimate complaint, you have to assume the validity of my position. Because from your position, you could say, well, there's evil. Okay, and I ask you what is evil? That which isn't optimal. Well, I could ask you, uh, what does that mean? And whatever standard you give me, I would then say, why is that the right standard? And ultimately, what it would happen is we'd get to the place of you saying that something is evil based on your personal opinion, your personal preference,
Right. But that would
because
also be Bob's position as well.
that's what would happen. You see, and then for you, and then you don't have a complaint. It's a problem that you have. And I'm going to answer your question from the biblical perspective, but I want to do this first. So what would happen is I would try and show you don't even have the right to ask the question from your perspective without ultimately being self-refuting, without making any sense. And I'm not trying to insult you or anything. I'm just saying your
Okay.
philosophical perspective doesn't give you any grounds to have any complaint or even have the right to ask the question from your perspective. Let me turn this phone off. Because you don't have any standard by which you can do anything. There we go.
Well, I don't know if you want me to address that or just let you go on.
No. Okay. So from the Christian perspective, within the Christian circle, evil has meaning because it can be contrasted to God's nature. So that which is evil is that which is directly in conflict with the nature and the holiness and the work of God. And so the Christian doesn't have, let me explain this. the statement I'm going to make. The Christian doesn't have a problem with evil. The atheist has a problem with evil. The Christian can explain what evil is and where it comes from. The atheist can't. There's bad things that are arbitrarily decided as being bad that they can't explain really why it is or why it's bad. They can say it's inconvenient. For them, it's really a philosophical problem. From us, from our perspective, it's not a problem in that we can give an answer. So evil exists because God permitted, and within his sovereign ordination, permitted creatures to have the freedom to be able to rebel against him. The first rebellion was of Satan, and he rebelled, and evil took its place in the universe, let's just say. And then it filtered down through Adam and Eve into the world. And so evil is that, and there's different levels of evil, even in the Bible. So we could talk about the ontological essence of evil as, like, for example, Satan himself. You've never experienced his presence, otherwise you wouldn't be an atheist. But if you had, you'd be aware of the presence of something else other than you, where an incredible dread and fear just envelops you for no apparent reason, and you're terrified. And that's a kind of an ontological presence, which, yeah, I've experienced it. Others have too. Then there's on the other end of the scale, there's an evil in the Bible described basically as an earthquake, a plague, a storm knocks a building down and someone dies. And so, yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. You're on a roll.
Okay.
But I wanted you to like focus on a specific thing, which I didn't get to, so it's not your fault.
You got to speak up, and speak slowly, because I can't understand everything you're saying. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. So I just wanted you to answer a specific part of it, but I didn't even get to it, so it's not your fault. But what I want you to answer specifically is, like, why would he allow something like rape, for example? Because that's not good.
I can't understand you. Why does he allow what?
Why does he allow rape, for example?
I don't understand.
Okay, I'm going to remove him from it. I know what he's asking, so I'll fill in what he's asking.
What was he asking?
Well, first of all, let me just say this. You save 30 to 45. Oh. You save 30 or 45 minutes by, instead of going through explain what evil is from a godless worldview, you say, hey, eventually we're just going to get down to it's your opinion, you know.
Right.
So that comes from years of experience on your part, and knowing that ultimately, no matter which way they try to explain it, it's going to come down to their preference or their opinion.
Right. And
no basis for saying that their position is better than the person who totally disagrees with them. So he didn't listen to that. He just wants you to explain, why does God allow rape?
He allows God. Okay, here's a simple answer. God allows rape because it's his will to allow rape.
Which is hard for almost everybody to hear.
Well, I would ask the atheist, why? Why is that a problem? So the atheist is going to say, well, it's not right. Now we're back to square one again. Why is it not right? In the biblical worldview, we can explain why rape isn't right. What they're doing, the atheist does not understand the problem that he has. He says rape is wrong. I'm going to ask him, why is it wrong? Because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it hurts somebody. Why is that wrong? Because they don't like it. Why is that wrong? I'll continue on, and they won't be able to answer the question. And what they're having to do is say something is wrong. Now, let me ask, talk about this. So, is rape itself wrong? Well, wait a minute. Is sexual intercourse wrong? That's a wrong question. My wife and I are married. We have sex. It's not wrong. But the exact same act of sexual intercourse with a woman that I'm forcing myself upon would be rape. But that's wrong. Why? Because of the intention, because of what's going on internally. If a woman wants it, it's not rape. If she doesn't want it, it becomes rape. So it becomes something that is subjective. Well, so what we're saying is the forced, unwanted sexual intercourse is what is morally wrong. Okay, why is forced sexual intercourse morally wrong for the atheist? Why is it wrong? Why is the action itself wrong? What is it about the intention in that act that makes it wrong? And they're going to say, The best they've got is because the person doesn't want it. And what's that got to do with something being right or wrong? If I don't want the dentist to drill into my tooth to save my tooth and fill the cavity, and I don't want him to, but I go and have it done anyway, well, what do we do with that? Something that we want or don't want doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it's what we want and we don't want. It doesn't mean it is right. It doesn't mean it is wrong. My child won't want me to discipline her, but when I do, it's the right thing to do, but she doesn't want it. Her desires don't make something right or wrong. So we come back to the atheist. Why is rape wrong? The question that he's asking, why does God allow it? Well, in the sovereign will of God, he allows it because that's what he does. He allows it. Well, what's the moral reason that he would allow it? That's a different question. But I'm going to just ask the atheist, are you saying it's wrong, and why is it wrong? In order for the atheist to raise the question of it being wrong, he has to assume the validity of my position, because I'm not going to argue for anything else. He has to say, well, it's wrong. But he can't say it's wrong. He's saying, Matt, I agree with you that rape is wrong. Now, why would God allow it? He has to presuppose my position and my God in order to answer, even ask the question and have his question have any meaning. And he's self-refuting to begin with in this. Just doesn't make, atheists do not think these things through.
Correct. Okay, I am going to forego. I had told Justin that he would be next, but Justin's usually with us, so we're going to move on to somebody who you have engaged with before, I believe. He's a deist. Last I heard, he's a deist. His name is Skylar, and I wanted to skip to him, jump to him because I know the guy, and when he's probably coming here with something that he wants to definitely ask or support, and he might have been part of the group. He might have joined the non-believers who were doing a review. I'm not sure. So Skylar, welcome to the hangout.
Hello, hello. How's everybody doing tonight?
How good? Were you involved in Dragnet's review of our hangout last week?
I was not. I didn't even get a chance to see the video, to be honest with you.
Oh, there's 3 of them. They're 9.5 hours. So
I think I might have seen like the picture for the video, but I didn't actually get to watch.
Well, you know, if you want to do a serious review, which I know that Dragnet wanted to do a serious review, but you know, some of the graphics that were going on there make it, you know, kind of. Anyway, Skylar, you can address Matt. You can talk about the topic that we talked about last week, or whatever you choose.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I can kind of go into what we were just talking about a little bit, where we talk about, you know, obviously I'm not an atheist, but I do believe in morality being subjective. And what I would ask Matt is, I kind of wonder, like I keep hearing, well, here's what it appears to me. It appears most of the time the Christian has the claim of some type of objective or absolute morality outside of themselves, but really that's about it. It's just a claim. And then when we hear the argument against the atheist or someone who doesn't agree with their specific theology when it comes to morality, it's like, well, it's just your subjective opinion, thank you, move on. As if they're not in the same boat. And I just kind of see there's some problems with that.
How are we in the same boat?
Well, because your morality is subjective also.
How is it subjective?
Because it's determined by you.
Maybe you weren't listening to anything I said?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not objective outside of... well, you could claim that you get your morality from the Bible. That's fine. Then it's objective in that sense. That it's you read an objective book and you believe that to be your morality. But if you claim God gives you morality, there's no way you can really back that up.
You don't know if there is a way I can back it up.
Well, that's fair enough. Sure. Maybe I don't know there's a way, but I'd love to hear it.
Okay, but so do you know what the difference is between objective and subjective?
Well, we can go to the definition if you want me to give you the exact definition.
Sure, a little bit. You know, just
sure.
You know.
Sure. Well, I mean, let me just do a quick. We'll do a quick Google search on objective.
No, you just tell me. You just tell me right now without. Just tell me what it is.
Yeah, not influenced by personal opinions or considerations in representing the facts. So how could your beliefs on morality not be based on any of your opinions or feelings representing the facts?
How could it not be? So you want
Well,
me to
how?
prove a universal negative about my own opinions on something?
Well, you're saying it's objective, so it's not based on your opinions or
Well, let's define
feelings
our
towards
let's
facts.
yeah, let's
So I'm
define
just
our
asking how
term.
that's
No, no, no.
possible.
Let's define our terms.
Mhm.
Objective means outside of ourselves, not based on our own desires and our wants, and that's what objective is. So we have objective things, objective facts. Uh, I may not like, for example, I'll use this as an example. I don't like the idea that I'm not super handsome,
Mhm.
and so subjectively, I look in the mirror, I'm handsome.
Mhm.
Objectively, someone looks at me and says, that poor guy, he go out in public like that. And so we have something outside of ourselves versus inside. Basically, that's what it
Sure.
is. So when we say that the Bible is the Word of God, it is our objective standard. It's a standard that's not dependent on us. We get our morals from the revelation of God through the Scriptures. So, for example, God says, don't lie, don't steal, things like that, okay? So that would be an objective standard because it's something that we don't decide, but that we trust God to reveal to us. That's our position anyway,
Mhm.
okay?
So it sounds like basically you break down your morals coming from a book that you believe God's written, or
Now,
not
not
personally,
just
but
a book,
yeah.
it
Well, the
is the
Bible,
Bible, the Word of God.
same thing.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean,
So a
let's
cookbook is
let's
a
not get
book.
lost in this,
Would
Matt.
you,
Let's keep going. Let's not
hold
get.
on,
We're going to go off into a
would
whole other
you
argument.
No, no, no. You're the one who said a book.
A
Okay,
book. To me, it's a book.
a cookbook is a book. Would you equate them as equal in value and importance?
Hmm. Depends on what my perspective on the book was. It would have more value to me
So then,
if I appreciated cooking more than I appreciate the Christian or Jewish religion. I would think the cookbook has more value.
what you're saying is it's all subjective to you.
And you.
So what you're doing, no, what you're doing is developing a subjective standard, and you're saying the Bible is no different than any other book, and then you're imposing that on me and saying, Matt, what you're doing is just going with this book. It's just a book.
Written by human beings, correct.
Yes, it was written by human beings.
Hmm.
You have a problem with that?
Yeah, because they have subjective minds, the very thing you're arguing against.
Can I read you something?
Please.
You tell me what it is, all right?
I may not know, but you can go ahead and read it.
Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. Many bulls have surrounded me, strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. They open wide their mouth at me as a ravening and roaring lion. I'm poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd. That's just a broken pot.
Hmm.
And my tongue cleaves to my jaws, and you do lay me in the dust of death. Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evildoers has encompassed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They look, they stare at me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. What does that sound like?
Don't know.
You
It's not
don't
familiar
know.
to me. Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar
What?
to me.
What? Okay, first of all, you live on the planet Earth, right?
You want me to be honest with you, Matt, don't you?
Yes, I do. You live
Okay,
on the
so then
planet
just
Earth,
accept
right?
my answer and then keep going.
Okay, you live on the planet Earth, right?
What do you think, Matt?
I'm assuming that you do
Okay, then why are you asking a silly question?
because I'm verifying, trying to make
Okay.
a point. You also
You
live in
don't
the
need to,
United
you
States,
have to
right?
verify that I live on the planet Earth by asking me? You don't think
Do
that's
you
self-evident?
live in the United States, right?
Correct.
Okay. And
At
you've
least
not heard of, have you ever heard of this person called Jesus?
I've heard of Jesus. Yes.
Have you ever seen any film about him being crucified in all the movies?
I've seen film. I wish we could get to the point though. It saves some time.
Have you ever seen how they cast lots for him and they pierce his hands and his feet?
I've seen how it's portrayed, yes, in movies and
Okay.
television.
So when I'm reading that the evil people are around him, his hands and his feet are pierced, they cast lots for his clothing, they divide his garments among them, that doesn't remind you of the crucifixion.
You asked me who wrote it, I believe was your original
I
question.
didn't ask you that. I said,
You didn't
what does
ask
this
you, you said,
remind
who
you of?
wrote this?
I said, what does this remind you of?
Hmm.
Does it remind you of the crucifixion?
Not from reading it, from hearing you say it. No, it did. That
So,
wasn't the first thing that came into my
so
mind.
evil people around him, hands and feet are pierced,
Hmm.
dividing their garments and casting lots. Here's a problem. That is obviously a reference to the crucifixion. And the fact that you refuse to either refuse or are ignorant about it is really revelatory. If you are unaware of it, and yet you live in America, yet you want to criticize Christianity, and you're not even aware of that, then you're not very educated and not very well informed. If, on the other hand,
I like how
you
that's
do know
completely
about it,
different from what we were actually arguing a moment ago.
but
You
I'm getting
completely tried to
somewhere.
make ignorance on my part instead of just actually arguing my points that I made.
And trying to make a point here. And if, on the other hand, you know what it is and don't want to admit it, well, then that's something between you and our Maker
Correct.
and an issue of integrity. Now, I tried to show you something that shows you the Bible is not just a book. This was written 1000 BC, 400 years before crucifixion was invented.
See, this is what I was talking about when you said a book, why we're going to go off on this whole tangent about something that is completely unimportant to what we're actually speaking
You
of.
want me to give you some answers about why the Bible, why we get our stuff from the Bible, and yet I can't even show you, because of your apparent ignorance, no insult meant, of the very stuff in the Bible that is itself remarkable, and yet you just equate the Bible as another book, like a cookbook.
I don't even agree with what you just read as remarkable.
It's
Why is
not
that remarkable? Is that your subjective opinion that it's remarkable?
I think it's very remarkable. Yes, it's my opinion
Thank
that
you
the
for your opinion.
description of the crucifixion was written 1000 BC, and Jesus quotes it when he's on the cross. And where was Jesus born? Do you know?
I don't know if Jesus really quoted that on the cross. Somebody who wrote and said he quoted it on the cross.
Okay.
There's
So
no reason.
what's your name? What's your name?
Skylar.
How do I know it's your name?
You don't have to have a conversation with me, at least. It's not my real name.
So who are you really?
You want me to drop myself here on the internet and give everybody my real name?
Oh, I don't know, because I
What's
don't
the
know.
problem with just calling me Skylar?
I don't know if you just have a computer program that's got a face on it. You're putting some, and you're a female imitating a guy with a computer program.
It's sad we have to argue like this. That you're going to these kind of routes.
What argue? I'm not arguing.
You're making silly debates about me not being a real human being. You don't.
Are you real? You're real, aren't you?
Like I said, Matt, you look real childish right now doing this.
Skylar.
Do you understand, Skylar?
No. I
Let me
understand
finish
what he's
with
trying to make a point of. I understand what he's trying to make a point of. But you're doing something where there's tons of evidence for it right in front of your face, right? You've talked to me before, and there's lots and lots of evidence.
I can give you various forms of evidence. You're just rebelling against the truth of God's word.
Listen, you were just talking about a specific thing the Bible says about Jesus quoting him. There's
You
very
go
little
say,
evidence. It is
you said,
not.
we don't even know if he even said it.
Equivocation. That's a
We don't even know
false
if he said it.
equivocation.
Here we go. You said we don't even know if he even said it. Really?
No.
So now what you're doing is saying, well, we can't trust anything in it. See, your whole assumption
I didn't say that. I didn't say
your whole assumption is that the Bible just isn't trustworthy. Is you can't know anything about it. The whole bit. How am I supposed to have a discussion with you like
that's
that?
a straw man. You're just straw manning me now.
No, I'm not. I'm drawing the conclusion of what you said. You just said, we don't even know if Jesus said it. I just told you, he quoted it on the cross.
That specific thing because you read it in a book. Just because you read in a book doesn't make it true, Matt.
Just because you're talking to me on the internet doesn't mean that you're rational.
Okay, that
now
may
what are we
well
going
be
to
true.
do?
That could be true. That's a very false thing. It's unlikely because you've had conversations with me before.
Yeah, and you've not done well before either.
Oh, tell me about the last thing we talked about when me and you had a
I don't remember.
Oh, you don't
Because
remember?
I would remember.
You just said I didn't do well.
Because I remember when atheists do well.
I'm not an atheist.
Well, deists to it. I remember when opponents of the gospel do well.
You're all over the place, Matt. You're all.
I remember when they do well. I don't remember too many atheists. I just told you, I don't remember. That's nice.
You told me you wanted to come on my channel and have a conversation with me, and
Yeah.
now you're saying that I didn't do well.
Rationally? No.
Well, what wasn't I rational
Being
about?
polite is different than being rational.
I believe you actually even told me I was being very rational during our debate.
Okay.
Skylar.
I'll tell you what, Skylar.
Why are you jumping in? What's going on?
I'm jumping in because this is my show. That's
All right,
why I'm
fair
jumping in. Skylar, your tone today is quite a bit different than last time.
Sure.
So you're questioning every point Matt makes. So Matt is supporting specific points based on what you have objected to. And then you're like, hey, you're off topic, and then you become the ultimate skeptic. And when Matt points out, if you apply ultimate skepticism, then we can't know anything, and then you say he's being childish, which actually he's giving you back what you've given to him. So your tone tonight is different than it has been in the past.
Me saying that a specific scripture could possibly not be known, we can't know if Jesus actually said those words, is not the same as him saying that he doesn't know if it's the real me talking to him through the internet.
I'm just trying to give you an example. You don't even know if what Jesus said was really what he said. I don't know if you're really you. Same thing.
Mm-hmm. What you're basically asking me to just believe what the Bible says and to take it at its word.
You are obligated to believe what God has told you, and the fact that you rebel against him is going to be held against you in the day of judgment.
And that came from the Bible?
Yes.
Oh, so the Bible said it, so I should believe it.
You can't make sense of anything without presupposing the Christian God.
And why is that?
Is there anything morally right or wrong?
Subjectively, yes.
No, anything morally right or wrong by the actual action is of itself right, or it is of itself wrong, not subjectively what you think your opinion.
What does that even mean? How could something be wrong in and of itself?
So that's okay.
You're saying that something can be wrong in and of itself, so I'm asking you, how can something be wrong in and of itself?
It would be wrong in and of itself if God has revealed that it is wrong in and of itself.
Which we have not determined is the case.
So let me ask you something here. I'm going to post something in. You see the text? The chat? Text?
Yeah, I can see the chat.
Okay. I'm going to post a sentence in. You tell me if the sentence is true or if it is not true. It is always wrong.
I'm going to read the sentence out loud for everybody. It is always wrong for anyone to torture babies to death merely for their personal pleasure. Is it always wrong? Yeah, to me it's always wrong. Sure.
I didn't ask if it was always wrong to you.
How could you expect me to answer a question that doesn't involve me? How could it be wrong outside of itself, in and of itself?
Read the question again.
You're begging the question.
Read the question.
Is it always wrong for anyone to torture babies to death merely for their personal pleasure? To me, yes.
Okay, so let's work with what your answer is. So you believe there's a universal moral absolute?
I believe, to everything that I've seen so far, in every context that I've thought about or understood, believe that it would be wrong to torture babies merely to death for their own pleasure.
So you believe there's a moral absolute that everyone's obligated to believe?
That is not at all what I just said.
Yes, it is.
No, it is. I just said, to me, I have seen no context in which it would be morally correct to kill a baby for fun.
Okay, so is a statement true or is it not true? You said your answer earlier.
Is it always wrong? What are you referencing? Are you referencing me? Or are you referencing outside of me?
I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you.
Okay, then yes, it is always wrong for me.
Okay.
For always be wrong.
Then you believe in a universal moral absolute.
That's a straw man.
No, it's not.
Straw man.
Let me show you. You're saying that it's always wrong for anyone to torture babies to death merely for their personal pleasure. You said the statement's true. You believe in a universal moral absolute. Now, how is it you justify that from your deism? Go ahead.
First, it's not outside of me wrong, because how can anything be wrong to me outside of me? Doesn't make any sense. That's why you're begging the question. And how can I account to what according to deism? What are you asking me to account for?
You agree the statement's true. How can it be true in your worldview?
How can it be true that things are morally wrong for me?
You say it's morally wrong for anyone everywhere all the time, period.
I said to me, yes. To me, yes. That's how I can. Because I can account for my own morals.
So, Skylar, you believe in universal moral absolutes.
No, I don't. I don't believe that it's wrong outside of myself.
You just said it's always wrong for anyone.
No, I said
it's always wrong for anyone. That's outside of yourself.
Why do you keep taking the word "to me" out of my sentence? To remove the subjectivity. That's what your game is.
You believe it's always wrong for everyone to do that.
Correct. To me, subjectively. No, that's not absolute. That's subjective.
Okay, go like this.
Can something be subjective and absolute at the same time, Matt?
Can you go like this?
Matt, can something be subjective and absolute at the same time?
Are you able to do this?
I can do this. Can you answer my question? Can something be subjective and absolute?
I need you to do this for me. I need to do this first because this is
I'm
really
not playing this game. I'm not
No,
playing
you
this game
don't?
with you.
What game? What game?
You're playing a game. Just get to your
What game?
point. Get to
What
your
game?
point, Matt. Matt,
What am I
get
going
to
to
your
do?
point. You won't answer my question. Now you're doing this weird thing with your hand. Is it subject? Can something be subjective and absolute at the same time, Matt?
You're busted.
Yeah. See, this is it's sad, Matt, when you have to resort to this.
Look,
Because you're not even arguing anymore. You just gave up.
you don't even know what you're doing. And I corner you, and then
Personal attacks.
can you tell me to be subjective and objective at the same time? You know what? Tell you what, I don't know all situations and all ways to answer the question, so I'm not able to answer the question to say yes or no. You said of this question, of this statement, you said yes, it's true. You said yes, it's true, that for you, it is always wrong for anyone. For you, there is a universal moral absolute. You're applying it to everybody. You can't see it.
So morality can be subjective and absolute at the same time.
Wow.
Can it? Yes or no?
I think Tyler. I think Skylar. I think
Wow.
you got it. Like what Matt just pointed out is true, but at the same time, you said, how can anything be wrong outside of me?
Yeah. How can anything be wrong to me outside of me? If
Right.
my morality is subjective, how can it be wrong outside of my own opinion?
So anything that happens outside of you, it isn't right and it isn't wrong. Like if
not
you were,
in and of itself.
if you were to pass away, and then there would be no more right or wrong.
Well, things would still be right and wrong to other individuals because they have their own subjective morality.
All right. Thanks
Skylar,
for.
how can it be universally right? How can it be universally wrong?
You're misusing my word. Just saying I'm saying that it's out. Hold on a second. Hold on, dude.
We could just go on. He can't see it.
Is it this bad, Matt? You have to give up already? Like you're already giving up the debate?
What, give up already?
You're giving up. We're not even 5 minutes in. You're already trying to get off the.
If you weren't around, and you had a baby brother or baby sister, then it's possible it could be right for someone to torture them to death. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think you don't understand the definition of subjective morality. Do you know the definition of it? You know what makes morality subjective?
Skylar, we can just take you on a trip that we took the first guy on and say, it's just your opinion, right? It's subjective. It's your opinion.
Is it wrong for us as Christians to push our opinions on other people? Is it wrong for people to do that? Because what you're doing right now is you're pushing your opinion on us, and that's what the last guy was doing. And
what opinion is that?
Wait a minute,
Skylar,
John,
you believe in the universal moral absolute, Skylar?
You already said, are you saying my morality isn't subjective now at this point, Matt?
You believe in the universal moral absolute?
No, I don't believe it's universal outside of me, no. Does universal mean outside of me? Does it mean outside of me?
Skylar, you said it's wrong for everyone. That's a universal moral.
No, I didn't say it's wrong for everyone. I said things are wrong to me. To me.
Yeah, for you believe that it's wrong for everybody.
That's subjective.
Do you believe it's wrong for everybody to do that?
Subjectively, yes.
Subjectively, you believe. So in other words,
you
simply believe. You personally believe it's wrong for everyone to do that.
Do that specific action that you said, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for affirming that you believe in a universal moral absolute.
Once again, it's not universal absolute.
Yes, it is. It's universal. It's for everyone always.
So
that's
once
what
again,
it is.
You're trying to call it subjective morality absolute.
Wait a minute.
Because it wouldn't be universal if I was dead, would it?
Let me take it a different way.
How would it be universal?
Yeah, try a different way.
Skylar, let me take it a little different way, okay?
All right.
So you have your subjective opinion on this particular act, okay? This particular
all moral acts are subjective.
Let's just call it moral A, okay? You say that it's wrong. A is wrong, and you say it's wrong subjectively. From your opinion, it's wrong for everybody to do A.
Sure.
Okay, now I'm a different person, and I say that it's always okay for people to do A.
Yeah.
Now what makes you correct and me wrong?
Now this is a good question. So, what makes it okay? I think that's not really.
No, what makes you right and me wrong?
Well, it's not an absolute right or wrong. That's the whole thing. It's why it's subjective. It's based on me. It's my opinion.
So you can't say that A is actually wrong.
No, I can say it to me that it is wrong.
But to me, it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay, yeah. But that's why what's great about society is.
Wait, Skylar. So if I do A,
Yeah.
You have no right to tell me it's wrong. Because
right by whom? Who's that right given by?
From your perspective, you say it's wrong, but I say it's right, and you say there's no way to tell who's correct.
I could give you my opinion. I could vocalize.
Right. And what would
opinion.
make it better than
Once
mine?
again, you're pushing your opinion on us.
What we do in a society is we usually have conversations. We get to know each other. We understand each other's perspectives. We make arguments. It's how laws are formed in our government. And sometimes when enough of us agree on something, and most of us do tend to agree on most things, at least the big moral issues all the time. When we do agree, we can make laws, and we can pass those laws to stop other people, when possible, from committing certain actions. You don't have to listen to me. That's your prerogative. I don't care if you do. And the morality, when it comes to morality.
Well, I think we should just apply Skyler's subjective experience back to him, and that's all they got to do. Because if everything's subjective, then he's actually been agreeing with us the whole time.
Well, you're in the same boat. Your morality is subjective also. That's my whole point.
No, that's your subjective opinion, which isn't necessarily valid for me, so it's self-refuting.
And that's your subjective opinion. That's not necessarily valid for me. So
then we don't have anything for sure.
Yeah, because there is no absolute morality. That's why you can't.
There is no absolute morality. You're absolutely sure about that.
Am I absolutely sure about that?
No, you just shot yourself in the foot.
Skyler, we're gonna move. Skyler, we're gonna move on because
I understand.
We've come to a roadblock. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you. I appreciate your time, man.
All right, see you later. Next is I forget. Key Freeze. If you would want to join the conversation, you're up next.
Can I correct you in the pronunciation of my name?
Well, I'd prefer a real first name, but if you don't want to do that.
Keefy's the Elite Hunter. That's how I brand myself.
Yeah.
I have a channel. That's why I call it that. Just like how Matt Slick's name is not exactly Matt Slick, I can brand myself how I want.
My name is Matt Slick.
Slick, the last name?
Slick is my birth name. It's on my driver's license and on my passport.
I thought I remember you saying that you used it kind of like a, kind of like a nickname and just kind of combined it together on another show.
Matthew John Slick is my birth name. It's on my birth certificate, my driver's license. I can put the camera up and you can see my diploma from my seminary where I graduated from. Slick is my real name.
So you're not actually using your real name. It's not Matthew John Slick. It's Matt Slick. So
yeah.
You're not representing yourself correctly.
Oh, I guess not. I'm deceptive now.
Well, okay, well, let's put it this way. If the Bible-thumping wingnut can call himself that, I'm pretty sure I can call myself Keefy's Elite.
Call it whatever you want. What do we call you, though? I didn't get your name or whatever, your address.
All right, here's the thing. Okay, whatever. Okay.
No, what should we call you?
Yeah, what do we call you?
Just real quick.
Keefy's.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. What?
Keefy's.
I said Keefy's. It's like feces.
I'm hearing
okay.
What I'm hearing. Oh, Keith. I thought you said feces. I'm like, what? Because I have a hearing problem. I have tinnitus in my at 70 decibels, so that's why I'm saying, sorry, spell it out. Sorry.
All right.
It's a good joke. I mean, it was funny.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Keefy's. It has a K in it. Are we clear?
Keefy's. Okay.
All right. So I couldn't help but notice that when you did the whole... Yes, that's right. I couldn't help but notice that when you did the whole title of the video, you call it Gaymerica, right? And you guys were talking about the whole...
Yeah, Gaymerica, yeah.
Yeah. When you guys were probably going to talk about the whole fact, how it's been legalized and everything. And,
we know it's legalized.
I don't necessarily agree with it and everything. But I just kind of had a little bit of a question because the thing is, you can still understand something, is wrong in that. But the thing is, don't you feel that, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the thing can still be legalized because, even though it's wrong, that people don't necessarily hold to the same beliefs as, the rest of us do, because there's a whole bunch of other unbelievers, and why are we holding them to the same standard if they don't even believe God exists?
You're a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay. So why should we hold them to our standard?
Yeah, like why can't it just be legalized and just Christians don't do it? Just out of respect.
I don't want them to, I do not want them to hold to my standard.
Okay.
I want them to hold to God's standard because that's what's right.
All right. Well, still, but why is it a big problem if they can do what they want? Just leave us out of it.
Because they won't leave us out of it. They won't.
In what way? In
They're
what way,
going
Nick?
to. In what way? Okay, let me explain.
All right.
Let me explain. Let me get my notes here.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. Where's the information? I've got it on my website. Let me just do. Oh, I know where I'm going to put it here. I'll do it. Go this way. Excuse me. Christians are being persecuted. All right, and it's going to increase. Homosexual activist admits sending death threats to pro-life, pro-marriage leader. That's in 2012. Owner's anti-gay views cause furor over soon-to-be Selwood grocery store. They got in trouble for that. In the gay marriage debate, stop playing the hate card. I'm just reading titles from stuff. Instructor at Catholicism University claims loss of job violates his academic freedom because he disagrees with homosexuality. A lecturer fired for saying homosexual acts are morally wrong. A man fired after saying homosexuality was wrong. I think that's the article title, where a guy on his own Facebook page said homosexuality was a sin. They fired him at his job. Eastern Michigan University ousts a student for not affirming homosexual behavior. Missouri school sued by student who refused to support gay adoptions. In New Zealand, church ministers cannot refuse to perform same-sex marriages. That's by law now. United Kingdom, teachers face getting fired for refusing to endorse gay marriage. Caterers who refuse to work on same-sex weddings face persecution in the UK. Christians in the UK sued by gay couple. They lose everything. Christian preacher arrested for saying homosexuality is a sin. That guy's a friend of mine. Family values campaigner quizzed by police for making homophobic comments on the BBC. That's only some of the stuff. The homosexual community will not stop at simply equality. They want dominance. They want conversion. Now think about this. Homosexuality does not produce anything. They don't produce children. They need converts. In order to get converts for their perversion, they have to go out into society and make their position known. Roughly 3% of the population, at best, is homosexual. Yet they are dominating the political, social, cultural scene. And it is on TV, it is appreciated, it is promoted. The White House puts its colored lights up within minutes of the decision being made, which means they were promoting it, getting ready to promote a moral issue like this. If a Christian had won a big lawsuit, would it put a cross in victory over the White House? Of course not. The flavor and the mood is moving against Christianity, hostility to Christianity. The homosexual community will not stop at what they perceive as a form of equality. They're going to want superiority, and they're going to want to silence the opposition. Here, I live in Idaho. There's rumors up north in Idaho of pastors being sued because they won't do gay marriage. I got to research that to find out what's going on with that. There are those kinds of issues, and there will be other issues like this coming forth. We know the Ten Commandments are getting ousted from all over the place. Christians are being fired from their jobs because they hold anti-gay views, and the homosexuals want our children to be indoctrinated because they're trying to get pro-homosexual stuff, propaganda, into schools and trying to get stuff even as young as kindergartners involved.
All right, you see, the thing is, though, as much as you said all those different articles and everything, and yes, I understand there is, persecution against Christians. I'm not saying that there isn't, but at the same time, you also got to realize that, first of all, they don't represent everybody, and second of all, just as much as they do it to us, we do it to them, like a whole lot more, because there is a whole lot more of us. Yeah.
So wait. Okay. So let me ask you, how do we do that to them?
Well, we happen to be, not all the time, but I mean, it's a lot of people that are on like the more right-wing kind of Christian side have like a tendency.
How do we force them to be fired from jobs? How do we force them to lose their tenure? How do we force them because a homosexual on Facebook says homosexuality is good, and he gets fired for it by a Christian? How's that? Where you got anything like that?
I don't have anything like that on me, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did happen. I've heard instances of it like it before. I've seen articles in the past.
Well, what I know is the Christians are under heavy persecution, and they're going to continue to be under heavy persecution. It's going to
Yeah,
increase.
but I think it's a little unfair to say that the gays aren't under any persecution either, because they definitely
I
are.
never said they weren't.
Okay.
Okay, I said Christians were. And I don't believe in persecuting homosexuals. I don't believe that that's the right thing to do.
Good.
I believe that what we need to do is love them, and they need to understand what the gospel is, and they need to repent of their sin, and we need to tell them it's sin. It's sin, and we need to have the freedom to be able to tell them it's sin, and we don't approve of their behavior.
Yeah, same here.
I've got a friend here who is forced, and she's a Christian. She's forced to go to LGBT training, sensitivity training. Really? Where's the sensitivity training for the Christians? It doesn't exist.
Well, maybe it's because it's not that. Maybe the persecution against the gays is worse persecution against the Christians.
Nope.
You thought about that?
Nope.
Why not?
The reason that they have that and we don't is because the Christians follow, largely in America, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Caucasian surfer Jesus, who stands at the door of your heart asking for permission to let him in because you're the sovereign one. Christians are largely weak, largely uninformed, largely pacifistic, and the preachers and teachers in their churches are preaching watered-down messages without much validity, without much fervor, without much conviction. And so the Christian church has become weak. On the other hand, the homosexual community has become very united. They've taken risks. They've suffered for what they believe in. They've been arrested, and they have pushed the envelope for decades in a concerted, organized movement. The Christians have not. That's why the Christians are not represented well, and that's why the homosexuals are represented well.
Well, there we go. Does that automatically mean, though, that the Christian side is right for doing what they're doing?
The Christian side is right whenever it agrees with God. The Christian side is wrong when they disagree with God. And so we are told to love those who persecute us. We're to love the homosexuals. We're to pray for them and their salvation. That's what's supposed to happen. But we're also supposed to go out and make disciples of all nations. We don't make disciples of all nations without breaking some eggs. And we've got to get out there and we've got to say things that need to be said. But too many Christians don't want to do anything. They've got the pre-tribulation rapture view. They've got the Arminian it's up to me view. And Jesus is the feminized blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy who's just really polite and nice, and that's it. And the Jesus that, hold on, the Jesus had overturned the temple tables and called people whitewashed sepulchres under their father the devil, that's to the religious leaders, and who went out and hung out with the drunkards and the prostitutes and witnessed to them. That kind of Jesus is not what really was promoted in churches, which is why, unfortunately, the Christian church is anemic and failing at its commission.
You honestly think it's failing? Because, I mean, if it was failing, I mean, I don't think I'd be a Christian today.
I apologize. I had to cough really hard to clear my throat, and I missed what you just said. I apologize. Could you repeat that?
I basically said I don't think it's failing that much because people are still being saved, and I probably wouldn't be a Christian today.
Oh, yeah, and in that you're right, and I totally agree. And no problem at all.
Yeah.
That God's not dead, and Christians are doing things, but we're not, in the context of our battle against homosexuality, that's the context I'm talking about. We've not done what we need to do. I mean, think about it. In 1973, abortion became illegal. It became legal. The killing of children in the womb became legal. 2015, homosexuality now is a guaranteed right, and persecution against the Christians is going to be on the increase. Let me just show you something here. This is something I did, and this is some of the. It's not a big deal, but evolution, I believe, is part of the problem in that it gives people an intellectual reason to exist without God. Without God, then laws have to be made to control the hand.
Well, hang on.
Where,
How about theistic evolution?
hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
And when we have God living in our hearts, then we don't need those laws externally. And the increase of laws and the increase of degradation in our country is the result of us getting rid of God from our doors, our halls, our institutions, and things like that. And it laid the foundation for relativism and moral relativism. So hence, in the 60s, the pill became prominent, which gave women the ability to just go out and have sex all they want. So it really supported promiscuity, and hence the 60s became the decade of promiscuity. And then following that, because of the sexual promiscuity, pregnancies all over the place, now they want to have abortions to kill the life in them. So 73, that became legal. Drug abuse is on the rise. The education system is highly liberal and highly anti-Christian. Religion, in fact, fewer and fewer people are believing in Christianity. As a matter of fact, from 2007 to 2014, there was a negative 8% change. Negative 8%. In other words, how many were Christians, claiming to be Christians? It dropped by 7.8%. Non-Christian faith increased 1.2%. Atheist increased 1.5%. Agnostic increased 1.6%. Nothing in particular increased 3.7%. Only within the Christian circles was there a decrease. In Oklahoma, the Ten Commandments are being just recently got rid of. Mexico City, the Ten Commandments are taken away. We're getting rid of God. What's happening is America is flipping the finger at God. That's what's happening. Homosexuality is now the norm of the land. And this is a problem, because marriage is now defined as man and a man, woman as a woman. In other words, man and a woman is now no longer the standard. When we remove the standard, everything becomes relative. If there is no absolute standard, everything is subjective. So, for example, a man in Montana just applied for marriage license to have 2 wives. If he doesn't get his license, he's going to sue. What emboldened him? The decision that homosexual marriages are now legal. That's what emboldened him. Pedophiles have begun to seek similar status, arguing their desire for children that they want, and they're using the same techniques the homosexual community used. Did you know, for example, polygamy is a form of marriage, many wives. Polyandry is another form of marriage, many husbands. Child marriage is also something that is out there in some cultures. Ghost marriage, where someone marries a dead person using a stand-in. Celestial marriage, which is an LDS Mormon thing. There's human to animal marriage. There's open marriage, where sexual activity outside of the marriage spouse is okay. Self-marriage, literally, where people are marrying themselves. Temporary marriage, which is designated for a short period of time. And then trial marriage just to see if marriage is going to work. Because the standard of marriage is now removed. Now marriage really doesn't mean much of anything.
Well,
now,
you see, those are a little bit. Those are a little bit different because, first of all, people are going to have all sorts of weird, fetishes and stuff, and especially now that we have the internet. But you also got to remember that when it comes to marriage, right, it's something that not just one person agrees to, but the other one does as well. So even with the homosexuality thing, sure, it's like wrong, but I mean, it is with consent. Where the other things, I don't think you can make an animal consent to it.
What if rape became the law of the land? That it was okay to rape a woman who, under certain conditions, dressed with cleavage showing and had a short dress on, and that tempts guys. So a bunch of guys for 30 or 40 years started saying that this was a problem, and they wanted their rights because their sexual orientation is to rape. And then in some miraculous thing, the Supreme Court says rape under these conditions is okay because women are basically asking for it. Well, now what do we say? Is it right? Is it wrong? People say, well, that's ridiculous, Matt. Really? Is it ridiculous? Pedophiles are now wanting this. People are starting to go for polygamy.
They're wanting it, but I don't think they're going to get it because, again, that's not consensual.
How do you know? Why is consensual stuff the thing? And then derivations out of what the word consent will mean will be derived. We know that Clinton, what was the word that he played with? I did not have sex with that woman. What does the word that mean?
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think it was that.
The word that.
He used. He said, well, yeah, trying to redefine.
Right. What was it, Neek?
I think it was
sex?
Is.
Well, my wife says I think it was sex or is, whatever. But the point is,
yeah.
I think it is. Okay. That all he was doing. Well, what does it really mean now? Then something doesn't mean anything anymore, then it can mean whatever you want it to mean. And this is why it's dangerous to hear on the issue of marriage. My wife and I, for example, because we love God and we fear God and we honor God, that's why we are still married. We would probably ended up in divorce a long time ago, seriously. We have our problems, we have our issues, but we're committed to God and we believe in marriage because we've made a promise. It's absolute. That's a standard, and we're still together. And things are, getting better and better, and hopefully, and maybe my wife will go, what? We'll have a, fun time. But if marriage is whatever you want it to be, then why stay married? Why have marriage? Why not just live together? And how are the children going to feel? And statistics show that children need a mom and a dad. They do best when mom and dad are there. And when broken homes are there, particularly when fathers are absent, we know statistically that children end up more in trouble. See, things have ramifications.
See, yeah, but I know...
Keefies, we're going to move on.
Hang on, no, wait a second. You talked to Skylar a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, he just kept.
How are you defining moving on, and how are you defining? You just redefine things, and it can mean anything.
It's my subjective standard right here for when the time is up. Ronnie has a YouTube channel. Matt Slick, his YouTube channel is True Empiricism, and Ronnie is up next, unless he stepped out of the room for a second because his picture came up. Ronnie's been waiting. And now he's gone. Okay, here he is.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're real loud.
Okay, let me turn my mic down a little bit. Yeah, I'd say that with gay marriage, I'd say that it obviously doesn't infringe on the Christians' rights for gay marriage to be allowed, but I think that what ends up happening is that because of how intolerant the left is and how intolerant they tend to be, I think it opens the doors for them to be able to press and to do things that that they've been doing already in the past. And something caught my ear to what Matt Schlick was talking about earlier in the discussion, and how Christians are weak. And I think that's the truth. I mean, the majority of the people in America are Christians. What are there 319 million Americans in America? I believe 70% of us are Christians. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 to 4% of the population are consider themselves as gay. So I mean,
3%.
they wouldn't be getting away with all of these things if the majority of the Christians started standing up and started speaking the reverse. And it's the same thing with the atheists as well. The majority of the atheists, there's really not that many, but they're pushing things by using the Establishment Clause to get things out of schools and to get things forced on us that have been in place since the founding of this country. I believe in the 1800s, the year 1800, the Capitol building was actually used as a church, and that the Constitution was actually formed in 1789. So that was shortly after the Constitution was even put together. George Washington, who allowed this to happen, oversaw the 55 members who put the Constitution together, and he's the one who allowed the Capitol building to be used as a church as well. So I mean, if people were to, the fact that the majority of the American people are ignorant and the majority of us are Christians is what really is allowing all of these things to take place. Christians aren't being active, and things are being taken out of the history in the classrooms that's allowing all these things to happen as well. So I mean, that's basically. Yeah, well, unfortunately, they're not going to. I mean, because of what you were talking about. I mean, it's true. What's going on here is everything in the media is trying to, victimize gays. I mean, they're all over the place. In every video that you come to,
Right.
they're trying to victimize them. And whenever they're talking about a Christianity, they're bringing in pedophilia and certain things like that, just to try to be negative towards what the Christian looks like, So when the topic of gay marriage is brought up, when people are thinking of gay marriage, it's almost as if it's equivalent to racism when you talk about it or you bring it up. And that's not what the Christians are doing. I mean, disagreeing with your lifestyle is not the same as hating you because of your racial status. So I'm rambling a little bit too much, but I mean, there's a lot to be talked about on this topic, and I think that really all of it really focuses around is the ignorance of the American people and the laziness of Christians.
Are you a Christian?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I've been saying this for years on my radio show and on the web and things like this. Christians have got to wake up. They're going to march us into camps if this doesn't stop.
Yeah, I believe that eventually that's probably what's going to end up happening. But I mean, right before our eyes, we're seeing everything that this country stood for, everything that's been the norm, completely turn around and shift. And it's going to keep on happening. It's going to keep on turning around if Christians don't get themselves involved. I mean, we can't force, okay, because the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say, to grab a hold of the sinner and make them stop sinning. Okay, so obviously, politically, we really wouldn't force anything too much. I think allowing it to happen is the sin on our part. But
our job is to make converts. Our job is not to go to churches like Joel Osteen's church when he says your best life now. The narcissistic Jesus, the Jesus that we want is the Jesus that's going to make us feel good about ourselves, that's going to comfort us. I mean, think about it. The Jesus that is portrayed in churches is feminized. Not that feminization is, feminine is bad. It's just that Jesus is not a feminine person. He's a masculine person. And that gender was chosen by God to be the atoning sacrifice. There's theological reasons, but there's also the practical reasons. It's men who do things. It's men who get things done, who go out there and expand civilization. There's men who get in the ships and go across the oceans, who get in the ships and go to the moon. And we do that kind of a thing. We're good at making mistakes. We're good at making great successes. But when we have a feminized Jesus that is being portrayed in church, then feminized men are going to be attracted to that. That's what the church then becomes. Those who are real, so to speak, Christians aren't going to know what to do. They're not going to be organized. They're not going to have any direction to go. They're not going to know what to do. I'm trying to rally some of the troops in my local area here by trying to teach men to stand up and be men. Doesn't mean I got it down. I certainly have a great deal of progress to be made. But the idea is that we Christians are supposed to be taking risks, and we're supposed to move forward. And I tell people, I say, I love to hear about people's mistakes. I love to hear them because it means they're doing something. If nobody makes mistakes, then no one's doing anything. And we don't hear about too many mistakes in Christianity. What we hear about are the big mega churches. We hear about how $62 million jets could be bought for somebody so he can be in comfort as he goes to speak someplace. We hear about this idiocy that is being promoted as Christianity, and we have pastors who don't know how to exegete their way out of a wet paper bag. They don't know what's going on. They're teaching Arminian-based, semi-Pelagian heresies as man-centered stuff, which they don't realize is inadvertently putting the sovereign God underneath their own feet. Exactly. And they don't have the spiritual cojones to get up and say, that's wrong. And it makes me mad. I know what we can do as Christians. I know what we can do as Christians. I wish the Lord would raise up somebody that a bunch of Christian men would follow. Someone who's got the ability to speak, who is willing to take the risks. What if such a person said, okay, this is what I want. I want every Christian man to go to Washington, D.C. on a certain day. And you will You prep it up for 6 months. You reserve the hotels all the way around. We'll get people who are going to do carpool coordination to get inside, bring backpacks so you have water, so you have food. And we're going to go to the Capitol all over the streets. And you have 5 million men invading that Capitol, and they shout. They shout out, "Give us our country back." And they hold Bibles in their hands and hold them up and say, "We want our rights. The homos have had theirs. The illegals have had theirs. It's time for us to stand up." And you don't get violent. You don't cause any problems. But you go and you do that, and you say, "We'll be back in another 6 months." And if that kind of a thing was done regularly, where someone said, "Okay, all the people," I live in Idaho, all the Christian men in Idaho go to the state capitol on this day when they have a certain referendum for whatever it is, and we were doing things. And if we could get people to stop supporting churches where we have women pastors and women elders, and stop supporting churches that have Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Hagin crapology, and we have people like Joyce Meyer teaching the mamby-pamby stuff she's teaching, the heresy that she has taught, which is being promoted in churches, if we can get Christian men to get off their butts and start doing what needs to be done and making people mad at them, not because that's the intention, but because that's the result of doing what's right. If we can start getting men to start doing this in this country, then we can start making disciples of all nations. We start demanding what we need. Jesus says in Luke 22:36, Jesus says, "Pick up a sword." He actually said, "Sell your cloak and buy a sword." He wasn't saying go out there and be aggressive. He was saying that in the context of being sent out into the world, we're going to need to protect ourselves, because that's the nature of what it means to preach that gospel. We've got to realize that the gospel message is dangerous. And furthermore, Jesus says in Matthew 16:18, he said that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Gates don't do anything. The implication of what Jesus is saying is that when the Christian church moves against the gates of evil, that they are going to fall. But what do we Christians do here in America? What we do is we sit at church in our comfortable pews, our comfortable bulletins, our comfortable music, and our comfortable messages, and then after church, we go out and we get a latte and we're served at a restaurant, and we go home and we go look maybe later that night for a new big screen TV, because that's what our concern is. And we don't tithe to the churches enough. We don't support various ministries and people who go out and do these things that have the gifting and the calling of God and the ability of God to go out and make waves. Not that making waves is what we want to do. It's preaching the gospel and forwarding that in a dark world. We need that among Christian men, and we don't have it. And it's unfortunate, because the Christian church is the reason this country is what it is today. The unbelievers are going to do what they're going to do naturally, because just as a dog returns to its vomit, that's what the unbeliever is going to do when it returns to its stinking, putrid, sinful ways. But we Christians are the salt and the light of this world, and we need to be the ones to shine the truth of God's word on their situation, and in a loving, prayerful, but consistent manner, preach that gospel to them and comfort those who are in pain and help those who are in need, and preach that word so that people can be converted by the power of God. That's what needs to happen in this country.
Well, the problem is, though, when you think about it, we're supposed to be the light of the world, but when you take a light and you put it in the middle of the woods, the mosquitoes are drawn to it. So, I mean, I think that's basically the same thing that's going on here. People, they believe in God, they really do believe in Jesus Christ, but like some of the messages that I've gotten on my channel from some of the Christians have been basically they're glad that I'm speaking to the atheists, but they don't want to get involved, because I've had people flat out just say that they would be worried about having their face smeared on the internet. So I think that what's going on here is that there's two things that are happening. People are afraid to step up and to start talking because they don't want to have to deal with what's going to end up happening. They see the hate that's going on, and they don't want to have to deal with that. Right. And the other way, I think that people think that it's useless. I think that people can tell that no matter what you say to these people, no matter how clear you are to them, they don't want to hear it. They have an agenda, and they feel like they'd be wasting their time.
That's right. You're right, man.
Hey, I just wanted to interject real quick.
No.
You had and Matt, you think you so slick. But anyway, I wasn't in the hangout, but I heard that Skylar was here. And True Empiricism just reminded me of something that I'm currently going through. That's a perfect example. Skylar fiction is a perfect example of what True Empiricism was just talking about. This guy actually has an entire playlist prepared to follow me for any hangout that I'm in. You know, and some of these hangouts could be about 8 hours long, so I'm only in there for like maybe a few hours, and but yet that doesn't stop him from assigning a whole playlist called Veckel something. I forget the name of it, but it has my name in it, and I think he's watching me because if you go to his channel, he has a whole bunch of videos where he's either ridiculing me or supposedly trying to call me out, or as if he's caught me in some sort of scandal. And,
Why would he do that if he's Mr. Subjectivity? Because that's what he is. He's Mr. Subjectivity. But everything's about his own personal opinion, yet he has the right to go condemn somebody else. That's hypocrisy.
Exactly. And I pointed we had a debate about this several months back about morality. And I know I couldn't have done a good job nearly as some of the greatest apologists out there. But I mean, again, it was really easy to point out the hypocrisy in his debate. I mean, in his position. And yet, what does he do? He he resorts to pettiness by making fun of my misspelling errors on here and there where he's had far many. So again, just go to his channel. You'll see his name. He's got my YouTube channel and name all over his channel where he's trying to criticize me and say, look at what Veckel's saying about slavery and God allowing rape to occur and all this other stuff. It's just a bunch of whining on his part. But he's got like 600 views from the atheist community, and he thinks that makes him a winner in this conversation. So I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead.
Good for you, man.
We are almost going to wrap up. I don't know if we want to start with Polly or few.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I don't mind. Up to you, though.
Polly, I forget. I don't think I used to call you that. Is there a different name that you go by online? He's been waiting so long. Oh, maybe I have to add him. That would be good. There you go. Show in broadcast. There you go. Polly, you're up.
Sorry, I was mute.
No, yeah, it was my fault. You're on, man. We're going to be live for less than 10 more minutes. Then whoever wants to hang out offline, that's fine. But
okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because, you know, this is a kind of a big topic for me. Like something that I've been interested in is the whole issue of Christians using the Bible to justify various things. And one of the ones that I've been very interested in recently is slavery. And I've been reading a lot about how I'm an African American, and while my ancestors weren't slaves, they were immigrants. I know some black people whose ancestors were, and it's interesting because Christians, you know, in the South, they used the Bible, you know, pointed to the Bible in justification for slavery, and they saw the non-slave-holding states as you know, the godless, or rather secular, laid-back Christians who weren't, you know, really committed to their theology. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that, because, I mean, they also use the same Bible.
Yeah. Hold on, let me clear my throat here, sorry. All right. The slavery of the 1800s is not the same thing as the slavery of the Old Testament. There's differences. There's some similarities and there's some differences. And just because people used the Bible to justify slavery in the modern context doesn't mean that the Bible's not correct. It does mean that they were misusing it. And incidentally, it was the Christians who primarily worked against slavery here in America.
In the North.
In the North, yes, that's true. And it's true that a lot of Christians were using slavery in the Old Testament to justify it, and that's just wrong. So biblically, the Bible acknowledges slave status as a property of the master. That's Exodus 21. The Bible
And in
restricts.
Colossians.
Yep. Yes, it did, because that was the context. We'll talk about that. The Bible restricted the master's power over the slave. The slave was a member of the master's household. The slave was required to rest on the Sabbath. He could participate in religious observances.
Yes.
Prohibition of extradition of slaves granted him asylum. The servitude of a Hebrew debt slave was limited to 6 years. When a slave was freed, he was to receive gifts that enabled him to survive economically. Now, there are similarities and there are dissimilarities with what happened in the 1800s. And from
Well,
what
I
I
mean, part
understand,
of it, there is overlap. Sorry to
there is.
interrupt, but there is
Absolutely is, yeah.
overlap. In fact, that's actually how a lot of African Americans became religious, by attending the services of the master, who would sometimes either be a member of the clergy of that particular parish or county, and then, you know, it was seen as a break from the hard work in the fields that they had to endure.
Right. Yeah, and, you know, well, let's look at the cultural context. I'm not trying to justify slavery, but you know, the reality is there was this. It's called, I believe, it's called the Apodictic Law, an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth.
Yep.
There was a phenomenon in the Old Testament times in the Middle East area called blood revenge. So, let's say I hit you and broke your tooth. Your brother doesn't like that. He comes and breaks my arm. My brother doesn't like that. Comes and kills your brother. Your family comes, and then we get this war. It just escalates. So blood revenge was that problem, and the Apodictic Law was given an eye for an eye. In other words, to stop it. The question is, why didn't God just say forgive and forget and go away? Because he demands things of people, but they don't listen to him. He put a law in place. At least you guys can stop here. Could God have changed people's hearts? Yeah, but we get into the theology of election, predestination, sovereignty, and it gets complicated. But the thing is, God, we see in the Old Testament a principle of God working with the failures of man, inside the failures of men, in their culture, in their societies, and restricting certain levels of badness, stopping it more and more. In cases of some cultures, he wiped them out, like the killing of the babies with Moloch and things like that, the Canaanites. So, slavery. He allowed it to continue even in the New Testament time.
Right, right, which is what I'm reading. I'm actually reading as you're speaking to me. There was actually a sermon given by someone justifying slavery on the basis of the New Testament.
Right. And they could make a case for that. But what they're missing is that Jesus didn't come here to remove slavery. He came here to atone for sin. What would happen? What would happen if we made disciples of every nation? Slavery will go away.
But would it? Because
yes,
many of the masters had Christianity, you know, practiced by their slaves as well, and they were able to be slave and Christian and master concurrently. Yep. So it wasn't until the Civil War. I mean, this is. Are you saying that?
Let me address that. Yes, they were, because they were culturally indoctrinated to accept slavery. It takes generations sometimes for this to go away. So they were culturally indoctrinated. There were accounts of a master he would have a slave, and they would go to church, and the slave was an elder, and the master was submitting to things like that. And yet there was still this economic social structure of slavery. But the point is that. But
that's more of a rarity. Sorry, that's more of a rarity. Yeah, because they weren't allowed to read.
Yeah.
So
well, actually, some of the slaves were, because you go to Galatians 3:24, the law is a tutor that leads us to Christ. A tutor was often a slave in the house who had the ability to read and write and was given the responsibility of raising the children for the master, and that was a slave. Not all were slaves, but it was a thing. See, I suspect, this is just my opinion, okay? I suspect that in the making of the disciples, what's going to happen is things are just going to get more biblically sound, and people are going to get rid of things like slavery and prostitution and drug use if we're doing our job.
But your God, sorry, but you know.
Wait a minute, your God?
Sorry, God in the Bible, as you said.
Wait. I'm curious. What are you, an atheist or what?
I'm an atheist.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so he condemns prostitution, but not slavery. In Corinthians, I think, 1 Corinthians, it says that the prostitute, nor the liar, nor the drunkard, nor the homosexual, depending on your translation, will enter the kingdom of heaven. But it doesn't absolutely repudiate slavery in that sense. So, I mean, what are the priorities in regards to this theology that it will repudiate, drunkenness, but not slavery?
Drunkenness is a more vile, more harmful, immediate issue. Slavery was often allowed in the culture for various reasons. You have two countries that would war against each other. The losing country would be devastated economically, agriculturally. They would have, the men usually would be wiped out. So if the country was left to just fend for itself, be starvation and plague. So often the victor country would take the populace as slaves, move them into their homes, and make them indentured servants. It was not the best situation, but it was one of the solutions to not letting an entire nation die in just abject poverty and famine. Usually the warriors, the victors, when they're done fighting, people have compassion, and so they would get them to be slaves. And in the Hebrew culture, this was allowed because certain people would have certain debts that they would have to pay, and they couldn't. They would go into indentured servitude. And then there was what's called a doulos. A doulos is a slave that wanted to be a slave, and he would have, I believe, his right earlobe pegged to the door.
With an awl, yeah.
With an awl. And so there's different kinds of slavery. I'm not an expert in this, but there are different kinds and different levels of it in the Old Testament. But gradually you see that they obtain more and more rights as the Jewish system increased, and slavery became almost a profession to some area. So when it's spoken about that in the New Testament, it's not the slavery of the 1800s kind of a thing. Yes, a lot of times they were considered property, but they
were
also
considered property, yes.
Yeah, a lot of times they were, a lot of times they weren't, but they were often considered property, but they also were entrusted to raise their children as tutors. They would often be adopted. They were often seen as sons and things. It's a different kind of a culture.
Is that why they could be beaten?
Well, that was the Old Testament, but not in the New Testament.
No, but I mean, they...
And I don't know the context of those in the Old Testament. Sorry, in that context, I don't know.
No, I mean, the Old Testament says that you can hit them or beat them, and many of the Confederates in the South. I mean, the South declared itself as uniquely Christian in reaction. If you read the Constitution of the Confederacy, it declared itself as set apart or ordained by Almighty God. This was the words of Jefferson Davis in a reaction to a more secularized North that didn't have God as its providence in government, and that's why that's one of the ways in which they distinguish the North non-slave holding states from the Southern slave holding states, is that they were sort of more lax in their views about what the Bible said.
Well, yeah, they were lax in the South, because think about it, how the slaves were captured, what was done to them. This is inhumane. That would never have been allowed in the Old Testament times that way, from what I understand. It would never have been allowed. And yet, unfortunately, the white Christians were profiting from this.
But it says that you can sell them, does it not? It says that in Leviticus 27, that women are half price of the men, and that you can sell them. And I mean, they
considered property. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so were many of the blacks of the South. And it seems that I would think that
Well, is it wrong?
I mean, I would say, I wasn't here to talk about objective morality, but it's just interesting how the same Bible you're using to condemn homosexuals is the same Bible that the white Christians used numerous times in order to support their views on slavery.
Yeah.
And
So
I mean, I just find it sad that,
did all Christians do that though?
No, but those who were seen as sort of, in a sense, lax in their theology.
So who fought to free the slaves?
The North.
White people,
Christians,
right? And
Christians,
did they not?
But they were foregoing their religion in order to do so. That's why the South declared itself as uniquely Christian, is what I'm saying.
Well, the North had Christian men who knew that it was wrong, who also went in to fight and gave their lives to free the black slaves as well, because a lot of Christian men in the North thought that it was wrong, morally wrong for that, and based it on the scriptures. Now what are you going to do? Why are you only picking one side of this issue?
Well, I mean, it's the same, but they were seen the same way as you would see the Christians who, for example, support gay marriage.
Well, wait a minute. Why are you only bringing up one side of this?
Because I'm saying that your views on... No, because I'm bringing up the fact that your views on this are analogous to the Christians who use the Bible for a malicious purpose.
People can use the Bible, the Quran, they can use a cookbook the way they want for malicious purposes. It doesn't mean that the book itself is bad.
But I'm saying that I see you as doing the exact same thing.
Okay. Doing what? What am I doing?
Using the Bible to condemn homosexuals and gay marriage.
Gay marriage is immoral because God has said it is.
But your God has also said that slaves should submit to their masters.
Yes, and they should.
So the black slaves should have...
Didn't say black slaves in the Bible, did it?
No, I'm just saying the slaves of the South in particular, who happen to be black.
Wait a minute. You said the Bible. The Bible just says slaves. So which kind of slave was it talking about when it said submit? They're white slaves, right?
There were white slaves in the Greek
indentured?
It doesn't specify in the New Testament whether they were indentured servants or not. That's in the Old Testament, and that's only for enslaving your fellow Jews.
There were some that had to be because they had to pay off debts. Not that that made it okay, but that's what the system was. Was that system wrong?
I would say actually yes, because there's no guarantee that he'll actually be able to pay off the debt, and that you could trick the slave.
But the Jews, if it was a Jew, they were after 6 years they were automatically released. And
but those are only for your fellow Jews. It says that you can enslave from the heathen around you in Leviticus 25:44 through 46.
Okay, so you obviously studied this quite a bit. It's really important to you, isn't it?
Well, yes, because I'm baffled as to how so many black people, I mean, as an African American, can embrace Christianity. And I've had this conversation with black Christians before. I'm not just picking on you. But black Christians and black Muslims who, both religions were involved in the slavery of Africans, in, North Africa, you had the Arab slave trade.
So is this why you reject? Okay, so you want to know why I can say homosexuality is a sin? Because Romans chapter 1, 26 to 28 says so. 1 Corinthians 6:9 says so. Okay, it's a sin.
Okay, and
slavery is not said to be a sin.
Correct. So your God condemns homosexuality, but not slavery.
Okay, so what about it?
So I'm wondering, what should the slaves of the South have submitted to their masters?
Yes, they should have.
Okay, now, given that, why should we have... So you're saying that those in the South who... I mean, not all of them went to fight for the North, but those who fled to the North, attempted to flee to the North, like Harriet Tubman trying to go to the Mason-Dixon line, she was in the wrong for doing so. She was escaping.
I don't know her situation, so I can't tell you. I don't know the situation that she was in. The generic principle is that a slave should submit to the master.
So the runaways were in the wrong. So the runaway slaves...
I'll tell you again, I don't know their particular circumstances, so I can't answer on that.
Can I respond?
Sure.
I've been in this conversation many times with atheists, and again, I'm called the racist because I'm a black man, and I say that the majority of atheists that get into these conversations with me are white, and they immediately try to turn it around on me and make it look like I'm a racist. So it's good that I'm talking to another black man about this issue. Okay, so you can't call me a racist for saying
Of course
that.
not.
But anyway, the fact of the matter is, your question, I see the slavery issue in the same way that I see Rahab the harlot being praised and recognized in the Hebrews Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. What did she do? What was she praised for? She was praised for telling a lie. But wait a minute, wait, isn't that against God? Well, of course. But look what she did it for. She did it for the purpose of saving somebody. She didn't do it for the purpose that was against God. See, when God tells us to do something like, for instance, don't practice revenge, okay, why does he tell us to do that? Because we have a different motive for practicing revenge than he does. That's why he says, do not practice revenge. Revenge belongs only to him. In the same way, this is why I personally believe, and somebody could correct me, about the issue with Rahab being recognized in the Hebrew Hall of Faith, because she lied for what reason? To protect two men of God. So in the same way, I can look at Harriet Tubman and saying that what she did was a righteous thing because, again, as Matt pointed out already, the slavery that was practiced here in the United States is vastly different than what God condoned in the Old Testament. Okay? So there's no problem with that. I, as a black man, can say that it was no problem with Harriet Tubman freeing, participating in the Underground Railroad and freeing the slaves. She was not
So
doing anything contrary to God.
no, but how is it? Can you explain the distinctions between the slavery of the South and just the slavery described in the Bible?
I think Matt did that already.
Okay,
No, but you
let
said
me jump in. Let
to
me jump
respond if I
in.
can.
No. Let me jump in because we're going to take this offline because for no other purpose other than I have to end it because I have to get up very early in the morning. So I'm going to give Matt Slick the last word. And guys that are in the Hangout, I gave quite a few of you controls so that when people enter when we're offline, you can add them to the broadcast so that they can engage with everybody who sticks around. So, Matt, did you want to say
Sure.
some last words on slavery before we wrap this up?
Sure. It's a difficult issue to kind of get through all the particulars, and I'm not an expert study on this. But just as Beckel was saying, and I already tried to point out earlier, the slavery that happened in the 1800s was different than that of the Old Testament. And Christians on both sides try to use the Bible to justify things. But when we make disciples of all nations, things like this are going to disappear, because to make a disciple of all nations means that we're going to treat them as equals to ourselves, and slavery doesn't fit in that. God allowed it for economic reasons, and he allowed people to do things, just as he allows people to sin for various reasons. But when we make disciples, these kind of things go away. But if you're an atheist, you cannot like that slavery happened, but it's not an issue of morality with an atheist. It's just an issue of you don't like it. If you want to argue that something is right or wrong, you have to assume the Christian perspective, and that refutes your own atheism, then you're being inconsistent. So we could have some interesting discussions on this at another time in more depth, but I actually really like this conversation with I forgot his name, because he's a black guy, he's articulate, he's intelligent, asking good questions. And then Beckel's right here. This is something I think should be talked about more. I'd like to have more discussions on this, work through some of the details. I value it.
All right. We will continue off air for everybody who watched. I appreciate it. Next week, same time, same place. And for more information on Matt Slick, go to carm.org and like him on Facebook. Matt Slick, you have almost 45,000 likes on Facebook. Did you even know that?
Yeah, I just saw that yesterday, as a matter of fact. So we're going to celebrate when we get 50. We'll just probably say, woohoo, and then we'll go on.
I just saw that today, and I thought that was pretty cool. So, yeah. And
does anybody know how to get our YouTube videos unlocked? Google did a combo thing. We are locked out of our own video account. So if anybody knows about that, let me know. But at any rate, I just had to say that. It popped into my head.
I'm sure some of the guys that are in here can help you out because they have YouTube channels. So,
okay.
All right. Until next time, everybody, take care and God bless.
Slavery apologist.